Have you ever had a dream so vivid you woke up believing it was real? Maybe you were being chased or you were falling from unknown heights. Whatever it be, it felt real because the audio and visual processing centers in our brains were lit up like they would be during consciousness. When we read a book, the same thing happens. Our language, sound, and perception mechanisms are in constant flux. Reading is anything but a passive activity. Today, I'd like to inform you on the neurological changes associated with reading in relation to the benefits it has on your brain. To begin with, we can imagine the brain like a symphony orchestra, with various sections of instruments or parts of the brain working in harmony to achieve a certain task. In our brains, we have four major sections, known as the brain lobes, each with its own function and with many subparts inside. The ensemble responsible for reading is comprised of 3 out of the 4 brain lobes: the temporal, the parietal, and the occipital lobe. Imagine you're listening to your favorite song. You can feel the tempo, right? Well, the temporal lobe is responsible for auditory processing. Our temporal lobe aids in phonological awareness, helping us identify letters, words, and syllables while discriminating between sounds. The parietal lobe is primarily responsible for receiving and processing sensory input. A good way to remember this, courtesy of washington.edu, is the parietal lobe processes what you touch, whatever you can squeeze, grab, or clutch. It also allows us to connect letters to form words, such as D-O-G for dog. Finally, the occipital lobe is responsible for visual processing. The way I remember it is my optometrist helps me see. Optometrist occipital. The occipital lobe interprets information from the eyes, providing meaning and visual representation for objects in our brains. Moving along, Julia Ryan, former producer for TheAtlantic.com, reported on a 2013 study conducted by Emory University that wanted to look at how the brain changes function and structure over the course of reading a novel. 21 undergraduate students underwent functional magnetic resonance imaging scans over the course of 19 days. Students were asked to read 30 pages a night of Robert Harris's novel Pompeii and had fMRIs the following mornings. By day 14, the novel was complete, but the students were asked to come back in for an additional 5 days to see if the changes associated with reading were everlasting. Concluding the study, lead researcher Gregory Burns revealed a hidden connectivity between the left temporal cortex and the sensory cortex in the parietal lobe, where readers experienced what is known as embodied semantics. Dr. Burns describes this as a process in which brain connectivity during a thought about action mirrors the connectivity that occurs during the actual action. For example, if we think about sending a text message, the same neural pathways during actually doing it are lit up when just thinking about it. Moreover, I'd like to show you the brain scan of a preschooler who is often read to by a caregiver versus the scan of a child about the same age who spends an average of 2 hours a day playing on screens. These are from CNN.com, who reported on a study conducted by the Reading and Literacy Discovery Center of Cincinnati Children's Hospital. This image is the child with exposure to reading. The red indicates a growth in organized white matter in the language and literacy areas of the brain that will support learning in school. White matter not only affects learning, but it coordinates communication between different brain regions, which is needed for learning. By contrast, here we see the child who spends more than the recommended amount of time on screens. The blue indicates massive underdevelopment and disorganization of white matter in the same areas needed to support learning in school. According to Dr. John Hudden, clinical researcher at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, kids who have more stimulating experiences that organize the brain are at a huge advantage when they get to school. And it's really harder and harder for kids to catch up if they arrive behind. Furthermore, we've discussed the changes reading has on your brain, but what about its benefits? According to Debbie Hampton, author of thebestbrainpossible.com, reading encourages mental stimulation that can slow the progress of and reduce the risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. Jokingly, in reference to the brain, she states, use it or lose it. But seriously, jigsaw puzzles, playing chess, and reading are mental workouts that'll keep your brain healthy. Second, a 2009 study led by Dr. David Lewis concluded that reading eases tension in the muscles and slows the heart rate. By reading silently for just 6 minutes, stress levels were reduced by 68%, compared to 63% when listening to music, 54% when enjoying a cup of tea, 42% when taking a walk, and 21% when playing video games. Another plus, a 2013 study found that fiction readers are better at generating theory of mind. What this means is the ability to understand others' mental states, beliefs, and differing thoughts. Additionally, as you may have gathered by now, reading contributes to vocabulary expansion. In adults, a higher vocabulary is correlated with a higher income, although it is important to note that correlation does not indicate causation. Strikingly, the average American reads 1 book a year. The CEO of a company averages about 60. Finally, reading is linked to memory improvement. It improves our mental flexibility, allowing us to develop and retain memories. Scientists at the University of California, Berkeley, found that reading daily can slow down late life cognitive decline. Reading lowers levels of beta amyloid, a protein found in Alzheimer's, by keeping the mind cognitively stimulated. Allow me to briefly summarize the main points. In the course of reading the novel, connections between our temporal and parietal lobes are strengthened. In children, there are significant differences in the brains of those who accumulate screen time versus those who are exposed to language and literacy. Reading contributes to mental stimulation, stress reduction, perspective taking, vocabulary expansion, memory improvement, and perhaps longevity. In honor of American writer Tommy DePaola, who passed away earlier this year, reading is important because if you can read, you can learn anything about everything and everything about anything.